Reverend Bill Shillady here, who was the former CEO and director of the United Methodist City Society and currently the managing director of affordable housing development at Ecclesiastical Realty. And then to his left, Reverend Patrick O'Connor, who's the head of staff and pastor at First Presbyterian Church in Jamaica and involved in the Tree of Life project. And next to him, Reverend Dr. David Brawley, the lead pastor at St. Paul Community Baptist Church, which is always nice to hear because they have over 3,000 members at that church. And good friend, and one of the early projects that I worked on is Reverend Paul Milholland, who is the pastor at Trinity Lutheran Church in Long Island City in Astoria. Welcome to you all. So why don't we start right here? Bill, why don't you give us an introduction?
Well, first of all, Renato, thank you, and thank your firm, Capell, Barnett, Matalon, and Schoenfeld, for hosting this event, and the God Box as well. By the way, in the 50s, it was known as the Protestant Vatican on the Hudson, because there were so many religious organizations, Protestant religious organizations here. So thank you for letting me be on this panel. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without the networking and learnings that I've gotten from being a part of this conference and other events around the city. And that's why I'm sort of doing what I'm doing. So I was a pastor in a local church for 30 years, and then I served as the executive director for 14 years of the United Methodist City Society, which is a very mission-oriented agency of the United Methodist Church in the metro area with a variety of social service programs. And when I arrived, it had a lot of unused real estate. So without the seminary training or classes on how to deal with real estate, I had to learn by the seat of my pants. And at this society, on behalf of the board of directors, I executed about $40 million in real estate sales. And by the way, the Methodists don't have to go to the Attorney General. I didn't get any bonuses, by the way, just so to be clear. So I cut my teeth on an affordable housing project on one of our titled properties in the Bronx, the Trinity Morrisania United Methodist Church, a 154-unit affordable senior project in a joint venture with a group called the Bronx Pro Group. 57 of those 154 units are for formerly homeless, formerly incarcerated seniors. So these returning citizens had a home for the first time after leaving prison. In addition to that, the Fortune Society is providing the on-site services. And I learned a lot sitting with architects, HPD, funding sources, the SARA program, just a whole lot of things. I currently am also serving, in addition to getting my real estate license when I retired, because it was a lot easier than the ordination exams I had to go through, I will tell you that. But I'm working with Ecclesiastical Realty, but I'm also the treasurer of Bricks and Mortals. You should write that name down, Bricks and Mortals, not mortar, mortals. And Manor Fatima, the program director of the organization, is here. It's a faith-based organization that provides creative and sustaining solutions to help houses of worship thrive amidst the costly and challenging landscape of being a congregation in New York City.
Good afternoon. I'm Patrick O'Connor, pastor of First Presbyterian Church in Jamaica, Queens. I am co-chair of one of the Metro IF organizations in Queens called Queens Power. And I have the privilege of being the chair of a not-for-profit that we created called First Jamaica Community and Urban Development Corporation. We took a parking lot which we bought in 2008 for $2.2 million, and sitting on the parking lot now is 174 units of mixed-use housing, 3, 2, and 1 bedroom, 40% which are permanent inclusionary housing. And we have a federally qualified health center. There's a Citibank branch on the site and space for Cornell Cooperative. Throughout the process, we had excellent representation from Renato, Matos, and Capell, Barnett, Matalon, and Schoenfeld. And our project, he will remember it as long as he lives because we've had some highs and some lows, but we stood the course. Our building is fully occupied, and we have added an asset to the community. And one thing that's remarkable, the partners are now collaborating to say, how can we as a village serve the residents of Jamaica? We got into this because we had a community organizer from Metro IF who worked with a team of members, and they did 1,200 surveys in the neighborhood. The 1,200 surveys represented 13 and a half minutes of interviews. So it's not like today's 30-second survey. It took real time preparing members to relate to their neighbors. And years later, we have what we feel really proud of, a real great project.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hello?
Yeah, it takes a second.
Testing. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Brawley. I'm the pastor of the St. Paul Community Baptist Church in the East New York section of Brooklyn. I am the 7th pastor of the St. Paul Community Baptist Church, and the 3rd Sunday in October celebrated my 15th year as lead pastor. Thank you. Also, I served for 15 years prior to that as the assistant pastor, so I've been with St. Paul now for 30 years. My role also encompasses my work with East Brooklyn congregations, to which I serve as co-chair, along with my colleague Patrick, who serves in Queens Power, and the Metro IF, east of the Mississippi, also co-chair. I'd like to contextualize my introduction by showing a very brief video that will give, I think, some clarity to the work of our village.
Baobabs are long-lived deciduous, small to large trees with broad trunks and compact crowns. There are 8 species of baobabs which make up the genus Adansonia and are native to the mainland African continent, Madagascar, and Australia. Baobabs are typically found in dry, hot savannas of sub-Saharan Africa, where they dominate the landscape and whose presence in that landscape act as location markings of a water source from far away. The origin of the baobab predates human history, and its lifespan encompasses thousands of years and has been subject to much conjecture, with radiocarbon dating providing the most accurate age-measuring data. General agreement of the median age range ranges between 2,000 to 3,000 years. Baobabs store water in their trunk to endure harsh drought conditions. The average baobab tree can store up to 32,000 US gallons of water in their trunk. The unique shape of the baobab with its vast trunk, combined with its unique water storage capabilities, make it an essential hub of life activity. Older baobab trees are often its own ecosystem, as it supports the life of countless creatures, from the largest of mammals to the thousands of tiny creatures scurrying in and out of its crevices. There are important nest sites for birds, baboons devour the fruit, bush babies and fruits drink the nectar, and in return pollinate the flowers. Elephants routinely eat the lower bark of trees and have even been known to knock down dying trees to consume them. Traditionally, baobab leaves, bark, and seeds have been used to treat almost any disease, including malaria, tuberculosis, fever, microbial infections, diarrhea, anemia, toothache, and dysentery. The leaves and fruit pulp have been used to reduce fever and stimulate the immune system. The leaves are also used to treat kidney and bladder disease, asthma, insect bites, and several other maladies. A study conducted by Oxford Brookes University found that polyphenol-rich baobab fruit extract, once baked in bread, reduced starch digestion and glycemic response in humans. The massive water storage capabilities of the baobab enable it to produce leaves and fruit, which are widely used for their nutritional benefits. The baobab fruit, which grows up to a foot long, can be eaten or soaked in water to make a refreshing beverage. They can also be roasted and ground up to make a hot drink, similar to coffee. Baobab powder can be used in smoothies and included in food recipes. Fresh baobab leaves provide an edible vegetable similar to spinach and is also commonly used as a relish. Fiber from the bark is used to make rope, baskets, cloth, musical instrument strings, and waterproof hats. Pollen from the African and Australian baobabs is mixed with water to make glue. Women in Africa have turned to the baobab fruit as a natural source of health and beauty and have used the oils from the seeds for cosmetic purposes for centuries. Think of our community, and while you're at it, think of the community that we have imagined. A community that is self-sufficient as the baobab tree. As the baobab tree provides shelter, food and water, medicine, and the needs of a community, so will the baobab village.
We imagine, our project is called, first of all, Baobab Village. We imagine, as the video has suggested, a village that meets the immediate needs of our community. Similarly to my colleague, we're also doing our work and our outreach to discover and contextualize what it is our community needs, but we do imagine 750 to 800 units of affordable housing, a new church, and an educational facility, as well as a commercial strip that will allow us to meet all of the needs of our community. Thank you.
Russ. I'm Paul Milholland. I'm the pastor of Trinity Lutheran Church in Astoria, Long Island City, which is much smaller than my colleagues. We are a worshiping community of about 60. We have about 140 members. And I've been there for just over 14 years and have been a pastor for 35 years. And you can read more about me in the bio because I put all the stuff about the project and everything else in there. So read the bio when you get a chance and you can find out more. Renato was working with us because we have a school building that was not being used. And we had a charter school in there, but they were not paying market rate. When Renato came in, the CEO of the school just let the lease lapse, and I said, come on, we need to do something about that, and he let it lapse. And so I got in touch with a sainted person, Howie Capell of Capell, Barnett, and he said, let me introduce you to one of our young new attorneys. I don't know how many years ago that was, Renato, about 13 years ago probably. And Renato said, well, they're definitely not paying market rate. And so Renato got involved with us, and while the school's attorneys didn't like Renato, he's a pit bull for his clients. Trust me, he really is. Very compassionate, but he's truly a pit bull for his clients to get the very best. So our leadership began to develop great trust with Renato. And our project, which has been completed, we had a parking lot across the street from the rectory where I live and the church. We were renting out portions of it, and we went into developing a 5-story building that also included some parking spaces for Trinity's use exclusively and 2 community rooms. But I'll share more when you ask other questions, Renato.
Thank you. So, I mean, one of the first question here is really about motivation, right? Because and that's why this is such a great panel, is that sometimes it's building a new church facility, sometimes it's income stream. And I'm curious what for you and for your congregation was the motivation for pursuing a development project? Like, what goals were you seeking to achieve? And why don't we start with Reverend O'Connor?
We wanted to bring something new to the community. First Presbyterian Church in Jamaica has been around since 1662, and every 40 or so years, it offers a resource to the community that the community did not have. As our elders and deacons reflected, we wanted to ask the question, what does God need us to do now? So that was a starting point. And as we did a listening campaign internally and in the community, there was this sense of priorities that were needed. A number of hospitals had disappeared, and so the question of providing a quality health center was important. Affordable housing was important. Program space, which focused on job training, was important. And giving new immigrants and returning citizens a place with which to connect was important, and food. And, we haven't addressed everything, but we had a sense from the community and the community board data as to what the community needed. It was an act of faith, but also a sense that every church is called to do something in its neighborhood.
Reverend Brawley.
So our motivation comes from our history. Our ancestors and forebears in 1927, who came from South Carolina, about 15 of them, they imagined a community church. I believe I wasn't able, of course, to interview them, but in my assessment of their motivation, they wanted to create a community where those who are coming up from the South to the North had a place and had a sense of connection and community. And so we're seeking to do the same. The second thing is that we are looking into the future, and what we have discovered is that, well, our building is getting older, aging buildings, roofing issues already, certain foundational issues we've had to repair. It's becoming to the point now that rather than serving in our building, we're serving our building. And so seeing afar off, we know that we need to do something different. Also, some money wouldn't hurt.
It is.
Some revenue wouldn't hurt. I don't know how others on this panel are addressing the issue, but certainly we know that we're losing members and we're also losing New Yorkers. I think it's now since 2020 to 2023, an estimated 550,000 New Yorkers have left New York, about 6%. And that is predominantly low income and medium income families. Those are our families that are leaving. And so there is a need for more housing in our community, as well as certain services. And what we're discovering is, while our world is growing in connection globally, things are becoming much more local. Mm-hmm. So where do we get our food from? Medical services and all those other aspects that you need. As a matter of fact, quickly, I'll say, we also gave birth to a building called Redwood Senior Living. It's up the block from our church, 80 units of senior affordable housing. We did this a few years ago, and we called it Redwood because Redwood roots don't go down, they go out. And they go out to connect to each other. And so this is kind of informing our perspective. We need to connect our community so that our seniors don't have to leave, families don't have to leave, and they can stay connected and stay in community.
Pastor Paul?
We needed money. Plain and simple, we needed money. Trinity is a small congregation. It's very vibrant. We continue to have new guests every single week. We are very progressive, and we aren't just one that says all are welcome and that's it. We live it. I'm gay and married, and we just put a transgender woman on our church council, so we are very welcoming, and we are extremely diverse ethnically and economically. But as many congregations know, the stewardship, and I know my member Stephanie Wallenberg is going to talk about this in a little bit, but the giving just ain't there, friends. We take in, our budget is about $650,000. So pastors, you realize how much smaller we are than all the rest of you. We're about $650,000, and in offerings we take in about $100,000. And so we needed money. And we had this parking lot sitting across the street, and they had actually worked with a developer in the past before I came, and towards the end, an attorney, not Capell Barnett, said, "This developer is taking advantage of you. Stop." And so they did, and so they were very suspicious of developing the stuff again. I said, "Folks, it's sitting there. And we know that we can do so much more for the community and the world if we have more money." So, I'm already answering one of the other questions.
That's okay. We'll skip you after.
All right. Folks in the neighborhood want us to build a parking lot. I said, "Is it going to bring the income?" No. Folks in the community said, "Can you do a seniors housing?" And it was actually my husband that said to me, "Paul, do you really think if you build seniors housing, those folks are going to come across the street to church?" No. He said, "Why don't you get the biggest bang for your buck and then use those funds to reach out to the community?" So we went for, I think there are a couple affordable apartments in it. It's a small project. There are a couple.
30%.
But we were able to put in community rooms, which we didn't have, which gave us more space. And because of those, we now partner with an organization called Siana, which is for new immigrants. They do all kinds of different things for new immigrants. We now have 4 AA groups, including an LGBTQIA group that meets there. We are able to use it for all of our arts. We have a thing called Creative Collaborative, and they are able to do things. I'm able to do Bible study there. And we were able to expand our food pantry, which had 5 people coming regularly. Now we have about 120, and our food pantry is totally different from all the others. We don't just hand out food. You have to make an appointment, and you have to tell us what you want. We don't just hand you, if you don't eat rice and beans, why are we going to give you rice and beans? But if you need olive oil, and by the way, we also provide things that you can't get with the EBT cards, like diapers and napkins. Do you know that you can, and there are some differences, but you can buy soda and potato chips with your food stamp card, but not diapers? What is wrong with that? You come to Trinity Food Pantry, you get the things that you actually need. So we were able to take the money that we got and reach out. Plus, we are helping with the situation in Lebanon, with the situation in Gaza and Palestine and Israel, with the Ukraine situation, with the Afghani situation, and we're able to send our money out to so many different organizations and really reach the world because we needed money.
No, I appreciate that. And I think that, you know, the reason we call it mission-driven development, and this is not always a popular opinion, is that the mission needs to be determined by the organization that's running it, right? And not every organization has the very same mission. And so some folks who think that if you're a religious organization, you have to do 100% affordable. I don't believe that that's the case, because I have worked with enough projects like Pastor Milholland and others where I've seen, when you start with a mission plan and then you look at your business plan, and in order to succeed on your mission plan, you need more funding, for example, than an affordable project can provide. But I've seen the kind that, the answer is there. And I see the kind of ministries that are coming out of these projects where, and not that you can't do so also with an affordable one, but I appreciate, you sharing a lot of the ministries you've been able to achieve now with the funding that you have. Bill?
Our major motivation in our project was that the Trinity Morrisania United Methodist Church was sinking into the ground. We were getting violations from the Department of Buildings almost every week, I think, and the 10 elderly women who were there were exhausted. And so the bishop and our cabinet decided that this church needed to close. And we decided, the City Society decided to take this very dangerous, underutilized property and turn it into something positive, senior housing. A motivation for that was seniors were being forced out of the community because of rising rents. Local politicians, the community board, you know, you got to reach out to those kind of folks as well when you're doing this kind of project. They also wanted to see senior housing. Major goal was affordable senior housing. And the second goal was, as we began to look at our mission as a society, a mission society, and what we could achieve, there was a population of returning citizens that we weren't helping in any way. So by creating these transitional units through the SARA program, we achieved that goal. The other thing was we sort of wanted to have a United Methodist presence in the building. There was a 6,000 square foot unit. Well, again, the bishop and the conference leadership said, no, we're not going to put another congregation there because we have too many Methodist churches in the same radius. So I reached out to United Methodist nursing homes about a senior center or a kidney dialysis center. Well, they were scared. They didn't understand that at all. So it wound up that the Fortune Society now has their Bronx offices in that space. And I think the key goal for us at that point was to take this underutilized, decrepit capital asset and turn it into a financial model, income generating, as a joint venture. So we're a 25% owner of the building. We didn't have to put any money into it. We got money for the property. We got part of the developer's fee. It became a real good, strong income stream for the society for us to do all of the other mission that we do.
Let me partner on that. The only money that we spent to develop this, we went into a 99-year land lease, and the only money we spent were the fees we paid to Capell, Barnett, Matalon, and Schoenfeld, which was worth every single penny. We don't pay the property tax. We don't care if they rent the apartments. We don't pay the utilities. We just collect the land lease money, which right now is bringing in about $250,000 a year. And let me tell you how smart Renato is. That rent on that 99-year land lease increases 3% every year. Good going.
In our case, we had a $2.2 million loan which needed to be repaid. And then our leaders wanted to be long-term owners, so we went into a joint venture agreement. As part of the closing, we paid off the $2 million loan, and now we are 50% owners until the tax credit period expires. And then beyond that, we're 100% owners. So ownership was important to our folks, along with money.
So we've only been listening to all the wonderful things about development projects. And I've not heard of any development project that hasn't had its challenges. And some of it is at the beginning, some of it comes later on. And so it's even more complicated when you're involved with a religious organization, because there isn't one owner or two partners that you make all the decisions and you live with those decisions. You've got a congregation that goes along with it. So what are some of the, and we don't have to go to each person, it's whoever wants to chime in, what are some of the challenges that you've experienced in your development project?
You have to have the patience of Job. I mean, our project, I met the Bronx Pro Group in 2008. Our building was completed in 2022. I mean, a lot of dancing with the developer. I wish I had Renato as our lawyer. Maybe I would have gotten a better deal, 50-50, I don't know. The other thing I think is, if you're going to do affordable, HPD's pipeline is slower than molasses. 5 years at least, and then if you have to get Attorney General approval, that can take a couple of years as well. Luckily, the Methodists don't have to go before the AG. We have a hierarchical structure. And I think you've already heard it. You got to meet the community, tell them what's going on, ask them what they need, and then keep communicating with them. Keep communicating with your congregation, your board. Keep communicating with the politicians. Don't stop communicating as the project moves along, or else you're going to wind up with NIMBYs. You all know what that means, right? And I'd rather be part of yes in God's backyard rather than a NIMBY. And there's an Affordable Care Act, a faith-based Affordable Care Act that's coming before the state legislature. Please read up on it, and I encourage you to try to, you can't, as a church, you can't lobby, but you can certainly teach and advocate.
Thanks.
While this is a Capell, Barnett, Matalon, and Schoenfeld conference, the attorney you have is everything. Mm-hmm. Renato is the best of the best. So we negotiated everything for Tree of Life. We have a term sheet. Our contractor messes up along with the architect, so we are delayed about 2 years, and they want to stick us with about a $3.5 million bill, which meant that they wouldn't get out of the project until 30 years. The original arrangement is year 17. Without Renato, who brought in a team of other consultants, we wouldn't have won. We decided we were going to fight them in court. The court sent us to mediation, and I don't know what I'm supposed to say in terms of the settlement, but we got a settlement where we got money. We're back at year 17. We're getting our 50-50 cash flow. It cost us a lot of money, but it was well worth it. And here's the thing, if you're going to do a church project, it's not love is patient, love is kind. You got to have this spirit that you got to fight for what's yours. And in our case, we decided we were going to fight. We had great representation. And it's not perfect, but the other side, the for-profit developer now knows everything we're watching, and we have good representation. Thank you, Renato.
I've never done this before. I'll do it now. You have to have me come back because I'm at the beginning of the process, so I don't have as many stories to tell. But I will say this, as one of our colleagues has already mentioned, there needs to be greater urgency in our city for affordability. And church properties right now is the next frontier. And certainly the pipeline, I think, is beyond 5 years now. It's closer to 7 years. And so as this pipeline backs up, many of our folks are packing up. And so the other thing I would say is that we're at the point of institutional alignment, making sure that our bylaws are ready to go through and carry us through this process, making sure that all of our governance is in order and that our entire project is in alignment with our vision for our ministry and for our future. And so having a quick vote, church vote, on our governance structure and all of that, so pray for us. Invite me back, I'll tell you how it went, all right?
I assure you, I did not offer anyone money to send me compliments, but whoever does it best gets the highest amount.
Oh, that's good. I'm not going to share problems. I mean, we smartly put some of our most conservative folks on the building project. And one of the wonderful things about my congregation is I wasn't on the committee. I got with our council president, we appointed him, and I said, go forth, because I trust our leadership, and my job from my perspective, is to do word and sacraments ministry and pastoral care. And I don't know anything about property development, but Renato did, and other folks. And this is one of the things, pastors, I share with you. Sometimes our lay people are smarter than we are, and we need to get out of the way and let them do the stuff because they are gifted by God to do the stuff. And don't feel like we got to be the CEO and running everything our particular. And I'm not saying anything about y'all. I don't even know you. But the great thing was we had the track record with Renato, and I guess, Renato, y'all looked at several developers, and that was a problem. Maybe that was a struggle, but you finally found the right one. Mm-hmm. Renato, the great thing was our leadership said, if you don't provide parking for us and you don't provide 2,000 square feet of community rooms, sorry, we're not interested. So you're in the driver's seat. Please hear that. It's your property. You be in the driver's seat. Don't let a developer say, oh, there's $2 million, there's $3 million, we're going to go for it. You make the determination. You have good representation. Let him be the bad guy, but it's your property. It's your calling from God. It's your mission. Don't let somebody else take advantage of you and then 5 years down the road, as we New Yorkers say, shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah.
So one of the things that each of your projects is similar, and we're gonna wrap up. Unfortunately, we can't get to the end here, and I want to open it up to some questions. But while your projects may be very different or motivations, but one thing that's what is very similar to each of you is that you all had strong pastoral and lay leadership in your projects, which is not always the case. There's a team in place. There's a strong pastor, but there's also a strong team. And I think what's really important about that is when you're looking, and this is my concern when I look, and I've been doing this now, these projects for 12, 14 years, and I'm looking at 5 to 7 year horizons for affordable housing projects. If there are churches who are coming in at this point, or religious, of any faith, but who are coming in and they've got 10 people left and there's no pastor anymore and we don't have strong lay leadership, and you're looking to do any housing project or any project, but an affordable one in particular is the last ditch effort to help save that church, I think you really need to think again because the length of time it takes, not only, especially if you're building a new facility on top of it, because then you're moving out, you're 5 to 7 years after you get into the pipeline to get to a closing, and then afterwards you leave for 2.5 years. Just think about that. Think about the honest viability of the congregation in being able to complete a project like that, not getting stuck in the middle of it, having signed agreements and building facilities out, and then having to close. And I think if you are, and this is to the denominations I represent and that I don't represent, if you are one of those congregations that are in that position, and you know that the likelihood is, being real, that this congregation is not going to likely survive or be able to survive a development project, is to work with your denomination in trying to make one of these projects work, but thinking long-term beyond ourselves, to the betterment of what the ministry can be after we're gone for this particular, from this place. And so I just think that that's really important, that there should be more congregational and denominational involvement when you're looking to do these projects so that long-term ministry can be thought out, maybe beyond just what we've been doing for the last 50, 60, 70 years in this building.
Let me piggyback on that, and I'm so appreciative of you, my brothers, because of what you're doing, and you're going to hear why. When I did training, when I was in my previous congregation with the Foundation Center, one of the first things that they said is, don't chase the money. What is your mission? What is your vision? Then go look for the money. Don't go research and say, oh, this foundation's giving money for a food pantry, and we don't have a calling to do food pantry, but we're going to do it because we want the money. As Renato said, don't just do it for the money, even though we needed the money, but we had a vision of what we wanted to do with that. And what I appreciate about all three of you is you were vision and mission oriented and said, okay, now how can we do that? So that's important. If you're dying, you're dying,
Any final thoughts real quick?
Well, I just wanted to say that the mission to the community really needs the North Star that guides this. It has to be. Any taking that you do needs to meet the needs of the community. And to do that, you got to get out and talk to the community. Too many of our churches, I like to say, have edifice complexes. So they stay inside the edifice and they forget that there's people out there that need help, need assistance. And, mission-driven development. Oh, every time I say that, I have to give Renato $1 because he invented that word. So let's see. I have one in my pocket here. Oh, that's your receipt.
I think for us in Tree of Life, one of the big learnings was you got to develop a strong internal team and a strong external team led by your attorney. Our internal team made up of a cross-section of members were not always agreeable, but you would get an honest assessment. So don't get yes people on your team. Get people who will debate and who will give you honest advice. And then you gotta get an attorney that can fight. This is New York, it's not some other place. Everything good here, you gotta fight for it.
Renato, I'm not sure if you have a second picture. That's one of the buildings that the congregation will be voting on, which is a more Afro-futuristic building. But this building, that one right there, I think is running in first in the vote for the new design. I will say this, that would be the church and one of the phases. So that's site B, site A, and then across the street would be site B. 616 units in site B, 137 units or so in site A. I will say this, give the church back to the people.
Yeah.
This hierarchical, top-down, from congregational driven ministries where the pastor is the be-all and end-all, that's an old story and it doesn't work. And then I constantly dream about what my successor will inherit. And what she is going to get is going to be an amazing, amazing campus, and the economics that she will be able to be as prophetic as she wants to be and is called to be, and will never have to worry about economics. Economics will not determine ministry.
Just to put in perspective, this is the smaller of the two projects. This is only 1/5 the size of the project that's happening across the street, to put it into magnitude.
In context with what the attorney generals were saying, one of the things that we didn't know that Renato shared with us, and so I'm going to turn it to you, is that we needed to create a LLC, a limited liability corporation, to receive the funds. Can you explain that to folks?
Well, right. It's a little different on affordable projects, but creating entities on any of these projects to insulate liability is really, really important. That if you're looking at any of these projects, it's really important to make sure that you try to isolate liability out of the actual religious corporation, so that if something happens on these projects, you don't end up, negatively affected.
Church.
Right. So in a project like this, for example, while the church portion of the project would go back to the religious corporation, correct? We would have a separate entity kind of controlled by the religious corporation that would be partners in the residential, to avoid there being additional liability. We don't have time for questions. I apologize. Unless someone has one real quick question. Yes.
What you expect to put 4 pastors up here, and you thought you would have time?
I think the AG spoke longer than the pastors. I think that's.
I was a girl that he said, you don't typically deal with the AG, so I could say that as well.
So there are 5 denominations, I think, under the New York Religious Corporation Law that have a hierarchical structure, a bishop or committees that need to approve real estate transactions. And so I know it's the United Methodists.
Yeah, so the Religious Corporations Law differentiates certain hierarchical churches where they make the assumption that the hierarchy is reviewing these transactions, which is sometimes not a great assumption that I've seen. Not speaking to your denominations, but just generally. So the Methodist, Presbyterian, Episcopal, the RCA church, like they don't require it. But they have to go to the court. You still have to go to get a court approval. Yeah. But it's different in that you don't have to go to the court on notice to the Attorney General. They're not involved at all in those petitions.
Right. Yeah, Supreme Court decision before the end of the transaction.